Hello, my name's Matt. I'm the Unfinished. I've been the Unfinished now for nearly 10 years. In fact, next year, 2022, will be my 10th anniversary of being the Unfinished. Why the Unfinished? I get this question quite a bit. And it's basically because before I started getting involved in computer music and synth programming, I was into comedy and writing, and I started so many projects, and I never got any of them completed, and I never sent them to anyone, and that whole thing just never happened. So when I got interested in computer music and synth programming, I decided to call myself the Unfinished as a constant reminder to actually finish things. And 10 years later on, it seems to have worked. I got into synth programming by accident. I actually wanted to be a composer stroke producer. I was really interested in cinematic music, but also breakbeat. I like doing breakbeat. And I used to hang around on the KVR audio forums, occasionally doing remixes and sending tracks, posting tracks for people to listen to and review. And a handful of people would say things like, "Oh, I really like the sounds you use in your tracks." And one in particular, a good friend of mine called Jeff, who some of you might know as Bluff Monkey, basically badgered me for about 18 months saying, "Why don't you do it? Why don't you just release some synth sounds and see if people like it, and they might buy it, and you might be able to make some pocket money doing it." And I relented after months and months and months, and made my first sound set for Native Instruments Massive, which was one of the most popular synths at the time, and is one of the main synths I used in my music, so that seemed logical. I knew what I was doing with it, and I released a sound set called Massive Dark Score 2, and people bought it, much to my shock and amusement. And in particular, one really amazing games audio composer, a guy called Sasha Dikichian. I think that's how you pronounce Sasha's surname. I've only ever spoken to Sasha online, and no one's ever said his surname out loud to me. So apologies if I got that wrong. But Sasha hired me. He bought the sound set. He bought Massive Dark Score 2. He then hired me to make some sounds exclusively for him, to use on the soundtrack for a game called Dead Rising 3. Lots of zombies, beating zombies around the head with cricket bats in shopping malls, that kind of thing, very George Romero. And basically, that gave me the confidence to carry on. So I owe a massive thanks to both Jeff and to Sasha for being able to sit here 10 years later, nearly, and still be able to say, "Hello, I'm the Unfinished." One of the amazing privileges of working in this mad job is that I've been able to work on some really extraordinary projects that I really couldn't have dreamed of when I started out back in 2012. Obvious ones are the work I've done for Hans Zimmer. I've worked on No Time to Die. In fact, I've worked on No Time to Die. And I've worked on Dune with Hans Zimmer, and also another favourite project of mine is The Crown, working with Martin Phipps. I first heard Martin's music when he did a TV score called Wallander, which was the British adaptation of a Swedish detective series. I'm a massive Nordic noir fan. I love Scandi crime. I am what you call a Scandiophile. I love everything about Scandinavia, and so that was actually quite a big influence on getting involved in computer music, was hearing Martin's score for Wallander, because it was different, and I really loved it, and I absolutely adored the series, and it really resonated with me at the time. So to several years later get the chance to work with Martin directly was fantastic. On a similar sort of tack, I got to work on the fourth series of an amazing Swedish and Danish co-production called The Bridge, or Brunn, as they call it there. Brunn. This is my Scandinavian accent hand. I mean, I loved the series from the very beginning, and to get to work on it was just amazing because, you know, I just adore Nordic noir. And I did actually kind of badger my way into that one a bit, I think. I kind of email stalked Uno Helmersson because he was a customer of mine. I said, "Oh, I love the bridge. It's amazing you work on that. God, I'd love to work on something like that." And, you know, I tried to make him feel like it was his decision, but I was kind of hinting very strongly. I've also had the privilege of working on some really amazing game franchises, such as Titanfall, Far Cry, and Call of Duty. So yeah, just astonishing experiences, really. You know, and I get to see that my sounds are used on amazing films and TV programs and games and stuff and albums. It's always a thrill to know where my sounds are being used. And obviously it's an even bigger thrill when I get to work on that project myself, personally. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy, really. From where I started out, hoping that a handful of people would buy my sounds, to, you know, being actively involved in Hollywood just seems a bit... Really? Yeah, it's cool. One of the amazing things about doing the bespoke work is that every project is different and every project gets approached in a different way. Sometimes I've contacted people, I've cheekily contacted people, said, "Oh, I love what you're doing, that sounds fun." Try and finagle myself onto the project, which is what I did with the bridge, actually. So I basically email stalked Uno Helmersson for a couple of weeks, trying to push him towards making him feel like he was asking me, but I kind of badgered him into it a bit. But generally I get approached by a composer or a musical artist, and sometimes they'll already be a customer, they'll already have bought some of my stuff and they want to use something specific for a project. Sometimes word of mouth will get me involved. For instance, getting to work with Hans Zimmer, I owe a lot of that to Urs Heckman of Yuhi. He basically put my name in front of Hans Zimmer at one point, and then Hans phoned me. That was bizarre. And the process varies, but quite often what it involves is, what I like to do is to get the composer to send me some tracks that they think is the right kind of feel, and even if, another good way is if they actually list some of my sounds that I've already made, and say, "I like these sounds, can you do more of that kind of thing?" And we often have to establish which synths we're going to work with very early on. I'm more comfortable with Zebra in particular, and Omnisphere, Diva and Repro. I'm not terribly keen on picking up a synth I've not used before for a project, because I just think, you know, it doesn't help with the timeline, and timelines are always pretty fierce on these projects. And sometimes I just end up doing a bunch of sounds and I file them off to the composer. The composer goes away and uses them, finishes the project and says thank you and pays me. And then, but other projects more recently, like Martin Phipps' The Crown and Hans with Dune and No Time to Die, as well as making sounds, there has been some additional production where cues are sent to me. I use my sounds to work on those cues to show what I think they can do with the music that they're writing. That's a very rewarding way of doing it, I find, because it means that you're not just using your synth programming chops, you're using your composing skills, as much as they actually exist. How little composing I actually do anymore. So that's good fun, but you know, there can be many different ways of working on these projects, and the key thing is that it's collaboration and both sides are working towards the same goal and want, you know, work out a a way of working together that means the results are as good as they can be. That sounded very much like a PowerPoint presentation. I apologise, but collaboration, working with nice people, and working out ways to solve problems. That's what it's about, really. Working with someone like Hans is, for most people, I would imagine in this business, a dream come true. It was good fun, and I remember the first time I met Hans in his studio. I said, "This project's going to be fun," and he looked at me as if to say, "It's not supposed to be fun," but it was fun. It was good fun, and when Hans Zimmer phones you up and asks you to work on James Bond, you don't say no. How can you say no to that? You can't. You can't. And it was a brilliant experience. It was unique for me to be working on such a high-profile project. I mean, obviously I've watched James Bond films since I was a little kid, and they're on British TV all year round, every year. You watch them all the time, and they come on. I've seen them a million times, and I'll just watch it because James Bond films are so watchable. And I'm a big fan of Daniel Craig's Bond. I think it's been fantastic as a Bond, and so it was a mixture of ways of working on both Bond and Dune. I mean, they were different. Bond was before the pandemic, so I had the fun of being able to jump on the train, go down to London to meet up with Hans and his team, and chat about things and watch the film through. I got to see James. I saw the end of No Time to Die like 2 years before most other people did. I had to keep that secret to myself for 2 years. It's a nightmare. And so that was great fun. It was great. It was interactive. I'd send off sounds down to the team in London, and they started off by using them on the cues, and then cues would get sent back to me, and I'd work on the cues with my sounds, and alongside, obviously there were other amazing people working on it, such as Kevin Schroeder, Raphael Shaban, and Mel Wesson, for example. So we were all kind of doing the same thing, I think, and it was amazing fun, and it was intense. I was working on it for I think about 2 or 3 months, and there were times when I was pulling in like whole day shifts working when I should have been having dinner with my kids and my wife, who were all very understanding, bless them. And last minute going down to Air Studios, hearing the amazing brass sound in those studios from the control room, and it was just a wonderful experience. Dune was a bit different because the pandemic had happened by then, and so I didn't see Hans or any of the team during that project. I think they were probably all still back in America, to be honest. So that was a bit more sort of firing things off into the void and then getting back other things to then fire back into the void. And it makes it trickier, but it was still a great project to work on, and the score is just phenomenal. Dune is just amazing. It better win an Oscar. I won an Oscar. It won't be my Oscar, obviously, but I'll claim a slither of it. I'll have 100th of that Oscar, please, if it wins. If it gets nominated, it should, shouldn't it? Anyway. So I recommend working with Hans Zimmer if you want. He's a good guy. Very funny. Very funny. I mean, there have been many personal highlights from the unfinished. I mean, it just astonishes me every day that I get to do something as silly as this as a career. Obviously, already touched on Hans Zimmer and Bond and the bridge and the crown and things like that. One of the things that never fails to astonish me throughout my career is when I see I get an email notification of a sale and I recognise the name the composer or the artist, and it's someone whose music I love. To see them like my sounds and to think that they're going to use my sounds in a new project, it's great. And I've been fortunate enough that my roster of famous customers has grown every year, and fascinating different corners of music, people who I'd never expect to have heard of me or to even be interested in the kind of thing that I do. So it's sometimes my stuff is getting used in places where I would never have originally intended it to be used, and that's fascinating. But also the day-to-day interaction that I have with my customers, be they world famous artists to hobbyists at home, just making fun music in their bedroom. I really enjoy getting emails from people who telling me that they really love my new sound set release, or they just generally like what I do and they really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. I got an email only this morning from someone saying that they've had a pretty tough year, and being able to have fun with my sounds has meant a lot to them, and that means a lot to me to have that impact. I mean, I've had a tough year myself, very tough year this year, so yeah, it's pleased me, and that interaction with customers is important to me. But I guess particularly as I'm a one-man band, the Unfinished is me. There's nobody else involved. It's a part of me, and it's an expression of myself in many ways. So it's personal. The Unfinished is personal to me. So people liking what I do and getting something out of it is it affects me personally, and it's great. And that's probably the most rewarding aspect of doing this. So if you're talking about highlights of my career, every time I get a nice email from someone, it is a highlight. And I hope I keep making enough interesting stuff for those daily highlights to continue, and for people to appreciate what I'm doing. It's what matters. So next year, 2022, is my 10th anniversary of being the Unfinished. I have some idea of plans that I want to do. I want to do some interesting things next year, some hopefully original stuff to celebrate. But I'm also going to be taking next year a little bit more slowly than I might have originally planned. Without going into any details, 2021 has been a terrible year for me personally. So I'm just going to chill next year, basically. There will be soundset releases from me, but yes, to celebrate the 10th anniversary, I'm thinking I'm definitely going to be doing a big free soundset at some point, which is something of a little sort of personal passion of mine that I've been working on for a little bit. And I might release some merchandise. I might make some t-shirts, maybe some mugs, USB sticks, I don't know. If you can think of some of the Unfinished merchandise you'd like, we can give it a whirl, can't we? I've got a list of little things that I want to do. It's always about finding the time. It's an intense business being a synth programmer, and I've got a wife and 2 young daughters to look after as well, and they take up a large amount of time, and so they should. So I enjoy it as well. Make it sound like my obligatory hour with the children begins now. No, I love my kids, they're great. They really are. Yes. What was the question? I've deviated so far. Am I doing anything special for my 10th anniversary? Probably, but I'm indecisive, so I don't know exactly what yet. But sign up to my newsletter and you'll find out eventually. Essential gear comes kind of in 2 categories for me. There's the synth programming commercial side of things, and there's the composer fun side of things, I guess. As far as the unfinished is concerned, getting a very early version of Native Instruments Complete was vital, because that introduced me to Massive and Absinthe, which kicked me off on this journey. And also having Contact has been a major part of my setup for so long, because it is, it's the de facto sample library player for, well, it has been for the majority of the time I've been writing music. Omnisphere was a huge purchase for me because, as I mentioned before, it was what really sort of kick-started me being able to do this full-time. And then all the Yuhi stuff, Zebra particularly. Zebra has been an absolute cornerstone of what I've been able to do, both releasing commercial sound sets and working in a bespoke way. And they are great. Yuhi stuff, absolutely top. Diva, Repro, Hive, it's all just stunning quality. And I wouldn't even dream of starting a project without having them as part of it. When it comes to composing, more, I frequently pick up Spitfire Audio stuff because their stuff is so good, and it's very much tailored towards the sort of music that I like writing as well. They always release something each year that I just go, yes, I needed that. Other sample library developers that I really like, I love Sonic Cure. They do some really cool stuff. Who else? My mind has gone blank. That's terrible. Fracture Sounds are a small-ish company that do really nice stuff. I've often got them in my template. Cinematic Instruments, I quite like them as well, particularly their sort of European bowed and plucked string instruments are very, very good. When it comes to plugins, again, I use the Yuhi stuff quite a bit. Fab Filter, Universal Audio. It made a big difference. That was a big step up when I first got my first UAD card. Using the sort of Neve and Fairchild and API stuff. It made a big difference. Eventide Audio, I love their effects. They do really cool stuff, especially now their stuff they do in Newfangled Audio is really cool as well. Cubase, of course. Back in the day, I got Cubase SX3. That was the first DAW I got, and I'm behind at the moment. I'm on Cubase 10 at the moment, and I think Cubase is just about to become 12, is it? But I never want to update during a project, and I'm always working, so I don't get that downtime to upgrade to the next level. Is there anything else? I mean, hardware-wise, this little beauty, the Move DFAM, it's so good. I've got two of them now. Just a monster for creating fabulous analog percussive bassy loops. Absolute dream. This one's quite fun. The Ritmo box, that's a Russian analog drum machine, lots of fun. You can't see it, but I'm liking my new Udo Audio Super 6. That's a beautiful analog synth. I've got Juno 106 as well, which it's kind of something I bought for myself. I'd always wanted a Juno 106 for years, even before I was even contemplating doing a career. I wanted a Juno 106. I'm not entirely sure why. I just think it's just such an iconic looking synth, and so that was a treat to myself when I first started being able to do synth programming as a full-time job. That was my reward to myself to say, not I made it, but I've made something and I've achieved something. And then my probably slightly out of view, my RME Fireface UFX2 interface, beautiful thing, absolutely love it. I've got a Neve Portico 2 master bus compressor and a Manly massive passive EQ, which I don't get to use because I'm not doing enough music to get to use them as often as I would like. And I've got the UA Audio 616 kind of preamp compressor channel strip, which is what I do a lot of my walkthrough audio through, so that's an absolute gem. I love that. Yeah, my lovely computer. Essential things, I mean, they're all kind of essential, but you know, that's a vague list of my favourite stuff that I use all the time, I guess, and that has meant something to me. Yeah. I've probably forgotten loads, but you know, I haven't prepared. Basically, I'm riffing, sorry. As for new gear, I'm actually trying to do the opposite at the moment. I'm having a bit of a clear out. I've got too many synthesizers. I know that sounds mad as a synth programmer to suggest I've got too many synthesizers, but I need to have a clear out in the studio. The studio is very messy at the moment, and I want to sort of start next year afresh, getting a bit more space. So I'm trying to minimize myself to 4 polysynths and 4 monosynths. That's keyboard synths. When it comes to the little boxes like the DFAM, and I've got Mother 32, and I've got the Behringer Pro 1, emulation. I'm doing this too much. Emulation. It is an emulation. These don't need air quotes. Yeah, so I'm actually trying to get rid of stuff, but the one thing that's sort of tempting me the most at the moment is probably the reissued Prophet 5, or the Prophet 10, I guess, if I want that much polyphony. Just because it's such a classic synth and it's just so beautiful. I think that's the only thing I'm really lusting after at the moment. I mean, you can always upgrade things like monitors, but you know, when you get used to monitors, like I've got Neumann's, you just say, stick with them, because you've learned them, you know what they sound like. Upgrading, maybe if I got a bigger studio at some point, but other than that, I don't really need to. Yeah, yeah, I guess maybe at NAMM I'll see something that I like. I like little fiddly boxes. There was an Erica Synths one, the bass line, maybe. I quite like the look of that. Maybe too many buttons, I don't know. But no, I think the reissue Prophet 5 is probably the only thing that I really would like to add, but I can't justify it until I've had the clear out. And because it has to be part of the 4 polysynths. And I'm definitely keeping the Udo 6 and the Juno 106. I'm pointing at them, you can't see them. And also the Access Virus TI2, because that's just, Access gave me that when I made some sounds for them, and so that means a lot to me. Yeah, so maybe there is room. Maybe the Prophet 5 could be my 4th synth. Who knows? What do you think? Make a decision for me. I'll leave the decision up to you. You tell me. Should I buy it? Maybe. What are my goals for 2022? Well, I've kind of touched upon it a bit already. Obviously, I want to do something nice for my 10th anniversary, but most of all, I want to have a nice year. I want to have a nice, relaxed, chilled year where nothing goes horribly wrong. That's my main goal. Music goals, which you're probably slightly more interested in. I've got a film score coming up in 2022, which I'm really looking forward to doing. It's the sequel to my first ever film score, a horror comedy called The Last Twitch. My best friend since university is an actor and a producer, and so he very kindly hires me for his work, for his films. So I'm really super looking forward to working on that, because I had an absolute blast doing the first one. And I do want to write some more music this year if I can find the time. I've got a couple of little projects. I want to do some breakbeat, if I can find the time to do that. And I've got a little sort of side project called Arnos Grove, which is about doing hauntology music, which is kind of retro synthy stuff, kind of folk horror, kind of music that reminds you of old public information films and sci-fi series of the 70s. It's quite a British thing, I think, hauntology. Yeah, so I'd like to do a couple of EPs under that moniker, if I can find the time. Hopefully I can find the time. Well, if I manage to relax a bit more, I'll make the time. So yes, for me to do more music does kind of mean I do less synth sound releases. So you may not want me to do that, but we'll see. I'm very focused on relaxing next year and taking things a bit easier, basically. That's the plan. It may involve lots of Ferrero Rocher. It may not, we'll see. Influences. Yes, I mean, I wouldn't have got into this if I didn't have influences. I think there was a point. The reason I moved away from trying to use hardware to using computer software back in the late 2000s is because there was music in my head that I wanted to make that I just couldn't make well enough on the hardware. It wasn't convincing enough. And I think computer music in particular introduced me to being able to make more convincing orchestral sounds, because I wanted to do cinematic music, but I've always been from an electronic music background, so I wanted to try and combine the two. And so one of the bands that has influenced me right from the beginning is a band called Hybrid, who are just doing amazing breakbeat with cinematic lush orchestration and vocals and stuff. If you haven't heard of them, that's mad and you really need to know about them, but I suspect most people will have heard of them because they are, they're iconic. They have a very unique, you can't be very unique, you're either unique or you're not. They have a unique sound, their mix of breakbeat and electronica and cinematic stuff and sound design. There's no one like them, and they have been an enormous influence on me being interested in computer music and the kind of sounds that I wanted to make early on. And and it blows my mind that I am now friends with them. I frequently share silly messages with Mike and Lottie, and they're two of the loveliest people in the world, and they are amazing people. And go support them, go buy their music, go and encourage them, because we need them to make more stuff. And they are fabulous. Alongside them, a very big influence early on was Harry Gregson Williams, and he remains an influence because I've always loved his approach to composing, his sound design. Absolutely fantastic. I went to see him speak at the Barbican in, I think, about 2013, and he sort of showed the way that he did some programming using loops in Contact for what's the name of the film? Blah 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 blah. The one with the runaway train. My brain this morning. Basically, anyway, when I first heard his soundtracks to Man on Fire and Deja Vu, I was blown away. And I think I learned about him because he worked with Hybrid. Hybrid worked with him and he worked with them and vice versa, backwards and forwards. And I was just thinking, this is the kind of cinematic film score music that I've had in my head all the time that I didn't know existed, and I wasn't sure how to do it. So that really influenced me, and that sound has stuck with me for a very long time. Moving on, becoming a bit more up to date, I think Olafur Arnalds is an amazing artist. Absolutely adored his music for quite a while now. He's been an influence, particularly in the sort of the Nordic noir sort of vibe. His score for the Broadchurch TV series is one of my absolute favourite TV scores of all time. I love it. It's just amazing. Blend of fragile strings and like pulsing electronic, the analog vibe. It's really good. I try to take in influences from a lot of different places, particularly you know, I'm doing sound sets that have a different vibe. I mean, I listen to and buy an enormous amount of music. I mean, that's one of the absolute treats of the job I do, synth programming, is that I get to spend a lot of time just listening to music, and it's an absolute gift to be able to say that half my job is just listening, and that's fantastic. So I think those are probably the main influences on my music and my synth programming, and who have inspired me to make me think what I wanted to do could be achieved. I think that's it. Any more questions from the audience? No? Good. Bye then. Bye.